Hi, I'm Rebecca Chen, and this is the story of how my silly little hobby saved my family from financial ruin. Though my husband and in-laws took their time learning to appreciate it. Sometimes life's greatest victories come when people underestimate you. I should know, I've been underestimated my entire married life. I still remember the day I told my husband, Michael, that I wanted to start an online business. We were sitting in our kitchen, the one his parents had helped us buy in a suitable neighborhood for their son, the VP of operations at Chen Industries. The morning sun streamed through the windows as I excitedly explained my business plan for curating luxury sustainable fashion boxes. Honey, he said, barely looking up from his Wall Street journal, why don't you focus on planning the next charity gala instead? You're so good at that. His dismissive tone felt like a paper cut, small but stinging. My mother-in-law, Helen, who had the unfortunate habit of dropping by unannounced, chose that moment to sweep in. Online shopping, she scoffed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her designer handbag. Darling, we Chen women organize charity events and support our husbands. Leave business to the men. I wanted to remind her that before marrying Michael, I'd earned my MBA from Stanford. But in the Chen family, my degree was treated like an attractive accessory, nice to mention at parties, but not meant for actual use. That evening, after Michael left for another essential business dinner, I sat in my home office and launched my website anyway. I'd spent 6 months researching sustainable fashion brands, building relationships with designers, and studying market trends. I called it Greenland Box, a luxury subscription service that delivered carefully curated, sustainable fashion pieces to environmentally conscious professionals. For 3 months, I worked in secret, packing boxes in our garage while my husband was at work. Helen would stop by, see me in casual clothes, sorting through inventory, and click her tongue disapprovingly. If you're bored, dear, the hospital board always needs volunteers, she'd suggest, as if I were a child needing direction. The first sign that I might be onto something came when a major fashion influencer featured one of my boxes on her Instagram. Orders jumped from 50 to 500 overnight. I hired 2 part-time college students to help with fulfillment, converting half our 3-car garage into a makeshift warehouse. Michael barely noticed. He was too busy at Chen Industries, where his father was grooming him to take over as CEO. At family dinners, they discussed business strategies while shooting concerned glances at my cluttered garage. It's just a phase, my father-in-law would assure Michael. Let her play entrepreneur for a while. Then came the feature in Vogue's sustainable fashion issue. They called Greenland Box revolutionary and the future of conscious luxury. Our subscriber base exploded. I leased a small warehouse and hired a full team. But I still hadn't told my husband how big the business had grown. Why bother? He still referred to it as my little project, when forced to acknowledge it at all. The real turning point came exactly 1 year after I'd launched. I was in my office, reviewing our latest quarterly reports. We'd hit 8 figures in revenue, when Michael burst through the door, his face ashen. The SEC is investigating Dad's company, he blurted out. They're freezing all our assets. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd just approved payroll for my 60 employees. What happened? I asked, my heart racing. Not for our finances, I had those covered, but for the pain in my husband's eyes. Dad's partner has been cooking the books for years, he whispered, collapsing into a chair. Everything's gone. The company, our savings, my job, even this house. It's all tied to company assets. I took a deep breath. Michael, there's something I need to show you. But before I could pull up my company's financials, Helen burst in, mascara streaming down her face. It's all gone, she wailed. 30 years of building this family's legacy, destroyed. How will we survive? Rebecca, you'll have to sell your little jewelry-making business or whatever it is. I smiled slightly, thinking of the warehouse down the street where my team was preparing our upcoming holiday collection. Actually, Mom, I said, turning my laptop around, I think it's time we had a family meeting about my little business. The silence in my home office was deafening as Michael and Helen stared at my laptop screen. The quarterly report showed Greenland Box revenue, $12.8 million in just the last 3 months. This must be a mistake, Helen whispered, her manicured hand trembling as she adjusted her pearl necklace. How could you possibly? Michael kept scrolling through the financial documents, his banking background helping him understand exactly what he was seeing. These profit margins, the growth trajectory. Rebecca, are these numbers real? I pulled up our company's profile on Bloomberg Terminal, a subscription I'd kept from my MBA days. Everything's real, independently audited, and completely legitimate, I said quietly. We're currently valued at just over $100 million, and we're in talks with 3 major investment firms for our next expansion round. Helen collapsed into the nearest chair, her Hermes scarf askew. But you pack boxes in the garage. That was a year ago, I explained, pulling up photos of our new warehouse facility. We now have a 50,000 square foot fulfillment center just outside the city. I haven't packed a box myself in months. I have a team of 60 full-time employees, and we're hiring more every month. Michael was still staring at the numbers, his face a mix of shock and something else. Was it shame? Why didn't you tell me? He asked softly. I tried in the beginning, I reminded him. Remember that morning in the kitchen? You told me to stick to planning charity galas. After that, I figured I'd let the business speak for itself when the time was right. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was my CEO dashboard alert. We just signed our 50,000th subscriber. I showed them the notification. Each subscriber pays between $200 and $500 per month for our curated boxes, I explained. We have partnerships with over 100 sustainable luxury brands worldwide. That cluttered garage you complained about, Mom? That was just the beginning. Helen's face had gone from shocked to calculating. Well, she said, straightening her designer blouse, clearly you learned more from our family than we realized. Now, about the SEC investigation. Perhaps we could discuss how your success might help the family situation. Mom. Michael interrupted, and I saw something shift in his eyes. For the first time in our marriage, he was seeing me, really seeing me. Not as his wife who needed to be humored, but as a business leader who'd built something remarkable. The SEC investigation, I said firmly, is serious, but I already called Sarah Jean. The Sarah Jean? Helen gasped. The corporate lawyer who handled the Maritech case. I nodded. She's an old Stanford friend. She'll be here tomorrow to review everything. And yes, I'll help with the legal fees. But I held up my hand as Helen's face brightened. There are conditions. Conditions? Helen's voice had a dangerous edge. First, I'll help with legal representation. But I won't touch anything related to Chen Industries directly. My company needs to stay completely separate from this situation. Michael nodded slowly. That's smart. Second, I continued, if we get through this, things need to change. No more dismissing my work. No more surprise visits to criticize how I spend my time. And Michael, I turned to my husband, no more letting your family dictate our life choices. The room fell silent again. Through the window, I could see the sun setting behind the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my warehouse was humming with activity, preparing tomorrow's shipments. I have a board meeting in an hour, I said, gathering my laptop. It's a video call with our investors in Singapore. Take some time to process this. We can talk more over dinner. As I stood up, Michael caught my hand. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have believed in you. I squeezed his hand gently. There's time to fix that. But right now, I need to focus on my company's expansion plans. We're launching in Europe next quarter. Helen opened her mouth, probably to ask about the family's financial crisis, but my phone buzzed again. This time it was my assistant. Mrs. Chen, Forbes is on the line. They want to feature you in their 40 Under 40 issue. I watched my mother-in-law's eyes widen as I responded. Tell them I'll call back in an hour after my board meeting. As I walked out of the office, leaving my stunned husband and mother-in-law behind, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. But the story wasn't over yet. The next few weeks would test our family in ways I never expected. The next few weeks felt like living in a different reality. The same people who had dismissed my little hobby were now watching my every move with newfound interest. The family dynamics had shifted so dramatically, it was almost comical. Sarah Jean, my lawyer friend, took one look at Chen Industries books and grimaced. The good news is Michael and you are legally separate from the main issues, she explained during a late-night meeting in my office. The bad news? Your father-in-law is looking at serious charges. My throat tightened. Despite everything, I didn't want to see Michael's family destroyed. What can we do? With a good legal team, which they now have thanks to you. We can probably negotiate a settlement. But, she paused, reviewing more documents. Chen Industries is finished. There's no saving it. That night, I found Michael sitting in the dark in our kitchen. The same kitchen where he dismissed my business idea a year ago. I keep thinking, he said, staring into his untouched whiskey, about all the times I treated your work like it was nothing. How did you not hate me? I sat down beside him. Because I didn't build Green Glam to prove you wrong. I built it because I believed in it. The next morning, Helen arrived, but this time she called first. Her designer clothes looked somehow deflated. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. Rebecca, she said formally, I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I made us both coffee, real coffee, not the expensive imported blend she usually insisted on. You don't owe me anything, Mom. But I'd like us to start over. Her hands trembled around the coffee mug. Chen Industries was our whole world, she whispered. Now I don't know who we are anymore. You're still family, I said firmly. That hasn't changed. Over the next month, things moved quickly. My father-in-law agreed to a plea deal that kept him out of prison but required significant financial restitution. Chen Industries was dissolved. And through it all, I watched my husband rediscover himself. I want to learn, Michael told me one evening after sitting in on one of my team meetings. Not just about the business, but about who you are as a leader. If you'll let me. I did better than that. I created a position for him, not in management, but in our sustainability department, where he could learn the business from the ground up. His finance background proved invaluable as we expanded into Europe. But more importantly, I saw him come alive in ways his father's company had never allowed. Helen, surprisingly, found her own path. After the dust settled, she approached me with an idea. Your customers care about sustainability, she said hesitantly. What if we created a foundation? Use your platform to fund environmental initiatives? 6 months later, the Chen Green Initiative launched with Helen as its director. All those years of charity gala planning finally found a meaningful purpose. The woman who once criticized my cluttered garage was now passionately discussing carbon footprints and sustainable manufacturing with my board members. Today, Green Glam Box is valued at over $500 million. We have offices in 12 countries, and our subscriber base has grown to over 200,000. But the real success story isn't in the numbers. Last week, we had a family dinner, not in a fancy restaurant, but in our kitchen. Helen brought homemade dumplings, a skill she'd recently decided to relearn, and Michael excitedly shared updates about our new recycling program. Remember when you said Chen women support their husbands? I asked Helen as we cleaned up afterward. She laughed, a real laugh, not her old society titter. Well, Michael's certainly supporting you beautifully, and doing a fantastic job of it. Michael wrapped his arms around me from behind. Best decision I ever made, he said, kissing my cheek, though I still can't believe it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. This morning, I received an email from a young entrepreneur asking for advice. She wrote about how her family doesn't believe in her vision, how they want her to take a safe corporate job instead. My response was simple. Build it anyway. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. And remember, sometimes the people who dismiss your dreams just need time to wake up to your reality. As I sit in my office, looking at the photos on my wall, my team, my family, the garage where it all started, I can't help but smile. The journey wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about staying true to your vision, even when no one else can see it. And sometimes the best part isn't the success itself, but watching the people who dismissed you grow into better versions of themselves when they finally open their eyes to what's possible. My mother-in-law still drops by unannounced sometimes. But now, instead of criticism, she brings ideas. Instead of judgment, she brings hope. And really, isn't that the greatest transformation of all? They say success is the best revenge, but I've learned it's not about revenge at all. It's about growth, not just your own, but the growth you inspire in others, even the ones who never believed in you in the first place. As for that garage where I started, I kept it exactly as it is, cluttered boxes and all. Sometimes, when I need inspiration, I go there and remember where it all began. Because sometimes the biggest dreams start in the smallest spaces, and the greatest victories come from the moments when everyone else says you can't.